What is going on, people? It is Aris Reviews here, thinking of Pinheads, back at you with another review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Spongebob episode, The Inside Job. Perhaps it's a bit overrated, but I think it deserves some of its praise. So let's begin with Strong Identity. Now this might sound like a bit of a weird thing to praise this episode for, but let me elaborate. There's a lot of factors that contribute to this episode having an overall strong identity. Firstly, I want to start with the very opening scene. Plankton actually decides to take Karen's advice. That's something that isn't very common on the show, and as such, it's very refreshing to see. There are a lot of character interactions we get to see. The main one being how Spongebob and Plankton interact and kind of affect each other in the story. However, I want to bring that up later in the review because it's one of my main arguments. I'll say this for now, it's a different, but definitely the good kind of different. But on top of the really interesting character connections, you have a fun story that stands out. It's rare to see an episode that kind of takes Plankton on his own and kind of solos him out. So it's definitely a change for the character. He basically goes somewhere without really going somewhere. What I mean by that is he's still in the Krusty Krab, but he's actually in a unique location, SpongeBob's body. It's definitely a visually interesting episode, and we see a lot of creative animation and set pieces. All in all, this episode sticks out in my head, and it's very unforgettable. Plankton and SpongeBob's interactions. I decided to make this an entirely separate point because it's really key to this episode. I like how there's basically two plots in this episode, but it's combined so well and it keeps the story focused. Plankton is trying to find the formula, and by doing so, he messes up SpongeBob's job. What's ironic is whenever Plankton tries to see what SpongeBob's doing to find the formula, he actually ends up getting further away than closer. It's like every time I try to strangle Dirty Dan to death and it's actually the wrong person, then I end up in jail for 5 years. Hold on, wait, frick, that's not the script! That's my freaking police record. Frick, I said it on camera, my YouTube career is ending, I am going back to the frickin' slammer, frick! All in all, the episode is built on this irony. It's very fun to watch Plankton react to the situation he's put in. I especially love the part where he says he outright hates his life. That being said, the irony isn't the good thing about this creative choice. All in all, it's just a very interesting struggle to see SpongeBob and Plankton go through this. It also gives the story two separate perspectives, but at the same time they are the same plots. It's good in a weird kind of way. Which is one reason why I decided to make this review in the first place, because it's an interesting episode to talk about. Back on track, I do think the writers have a little fun with this type of story. On SpongeBob's end, it was just another day at the Krusty Krab with a few minor complications. On Plankton's end, he goes through a whole freaking journey and almost gets the formula. Which kinda goes back to what I said earlier about it being a Krusty Krab episode, but the episode has a different feel. To end off this segment, I think Plankton and SpongeBob's effect on each other escalates the premise of the episode. It makes it a lot more meaningful and valuable because of how it plays out. What more could you ask for in an episode than that? Scale. I talked about this a little bit in the first 2 points of the video, so I want to make this brief. I think this episode has a very good scale. Going back to my point about the episode taking place in the Krusty Krab but still having a different vibe, the scale of the episode really helps that vibe. There's a really big and grand feeling inside of SpongeBob's body that makes this episode feel like a true adventure. It's a visually interesting episode, but not just because of the animation itself, more of because of the feeling the animation gives the audience. I'm not claiming it to be a freaking visual masterpiece, I just wanted to briefly say the scope and the scale is good. Layered story. Throughout most of the review, I talked about more of the characters and the identity of the story, but let's talk about the plot itself. If I had to use one word to describe this episode, it would be layered. Because hey, ogres have layers. This story takes a lot of different directions while having a clear point A to point B. Plankton journeys all around SpongeBob's body. However, it's all the challenges he faces that keeps the story interesting. He goes into SpongeBob's eyes, then his ears, then his brain, then his heart. It keeps the pacing of the episode consistent, and the tone it achieves just works. For example, when Plankton goes into SpongeBob's brain, there's this really eerie music. This episode is trying to give off a sort of creepy vibe and it works. That being said, the episode never gets so story heavy or serious. The episode still has several jokes, and while I wouldn't say it's a very funny episode, I still like the jokes just being there. It kind of breaks up the story and definitely makes the episode not feel too story heavy. Not to mention, there are still some jokes I did laugh at. I'm not saying all the humor is unfunny. Overall, I think this episode has pretty much all elements you need for a good story. That's why I would say the story is very layered. Let me break it down for you. You start off with an observation. Plankton is being lazy, and Karen wants to help him get the formula. Plankton gets shot off, and the episode has several misleads. On top of that, it kind of foreshadows Patrick at the end in a weird kind of way. Then he goes in SpongeBob's head, and it gives us the journey throughout the SpongeBob episode. For the sake of not repeating what I said earlier and what I already praised it for in this video, I'll skip to the end. Plankton finally gets the formula, but through some kind of creative circumstance, he turns into SpongeBob. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little conflicted on how to feel about this ending. Why? Well, debatable ending. Throughout most of the video, I've been praising this episode, but there's one element in this episode that I didn't really like. That being said, I don't think I can say I disliked it either. As I said earlier in the review, I think the ending of this episode is debatable. If you don't know, when Plankton starts absorbing SpongeBob's heart, and whoa, dude! I just realized how fricked up that sound. Writers, I don't know what kind of fantasies you have, but leave that out of it, alright? This is the same show that made an entire episode about procrastinating an essay, okay? This isn't freaking Dragon Ball Z where we're going around punching each other's stomachs and throwing up androids, alright? Oh, frick, that sounds even more screwed up. You know what? Analogy completely lost. It's gone in a freaking forest. Let's just get back to whatever I was saying. When Plankton absorbs SpongeBob's heart, he turns into SpongeBob and then kind of flies out the window and he turns into Patrick. On some level, I kind of like this ending because I feel like it has the kind of twist that it needs. It seems pretty inoffensive and something you would kind of expect from a SpongeBob episode. Then again, after we talked about Plankton absorbing freaking hearts, I don't even know what to expect from the show anymore. As for things I don't like about the ending, while I feel like the episode did need some kind of twist, it still feels a little forced and out of nowhere. I feel like there probably was a more clever solution to Plankton not getting the formula instead of this kind of forced solution. I think it balances out to being a somewhat decent ending of the episode. There's just as much to like as there is to dislike. Though if there's one thing to note, it's when Plankton is absorbing the heart. Not just the fricked up premise of one of our childhood icons absorbing SpongeBob's heart, but his reaction. Yeah, due to copyright, I can't play it, but what the frick am I watching? Who the frick would approve that in the script? Between this and Plankton getting his booty licked in the episode Salsa I'm really starting to question a lot of what goes behind the scenes. Well, all I'm going to say is this. Plankton got the formula alright, but it definitely wasn't for Krabby Patties. Natural exposition. For anyone following my channel, you could probably guess that I hate it when dialogue is bland and exposition heavy. I criticized Pickle and Peanut and Powerpuff Girls 2016 for this, and it's definitely very apparent in the episodes I reviewed. That being said, I feel like this episode has a very nice and creative way to introduce its concepts. For example, this episode itself is kind of about Plankton learning how to work his suction cup thing. If Karen had just told him to go for SpongeBob's heart for the recipe, the episode would either drag or be over in 2 freaking seconds. Another example is the opening scene. Instead of just having Plankton invent the thing right off the bat, Karen gives it to him, and Plankton and Karen are pretty in character here. The dialogue's natural, and the exposition is very carefully interwoven into the story. Add that to the rest of the things I said in this review, and it adds up to an enjoyable episode. Conclusion. Overall, this episode was a very nice change of pace, which was sorely needed in the absolute worst season of the freaking show. Even if you're a new viewer, the episode still has a nice journey with Plankton being a fun protagonist along with its big scale and vibe. Overall, I think this episode has the whole package, and there's really not much to dislike. That is going to do it for this review. Please like this video and subscribe to both this channel and my second channel, and check out my social media linked in the description. Average reviews, signing the frick out.